Good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm Roseanne Hanson of Exploring Overland and the Field Arts Institute. Thank you so much for joining me this morning for this fun workshop on elegant ink. I've really been going a bit bonkers down this rabbit hole, learning more than I ever thought possible about ink. It's really fun to dig into it, learn the history and all of that. So if you're just joining us, please turn off your video and audio so that I can get a really high quality recording. The way we're going to work this morning is I'm going to do a slideshow with a little bit of history and types of ink and all sorts of information to help us kind of make decisions about what kind of ink works best for field notes, nature journaling, that type of thing. And then we'll break off, do some practice marks. Then we're going to kind of put it all together and we're going to do some sample drawings. I'm using just one photo as kind of a base photo to do different types of sketches, just really quick ones. We're not going to go super detailed. And then we'll come back and I'll show some great examples of different ways to do things. And if time at the end, I want to give some tips for cleaning pens for those of you who are using fountain pens. So for process, since I don't have a helper person keeping an eye on things, as I've said, if you can't hear something or something goes terribly wrong with my presentation, verbally come on and say, oh, oops, we can't hear you, stop. That's very helpful. And and also, so for questions, if you want to put questions in the chat, if you could please put all capitals if you're asking a question, that just helps me see it in the chat. Or just save your question, do your raise hand. The raise hand feature is under reactions down at the bottom, and just put your raise hand on, and then that will bring you to the front of the gallery. So when I go to questions, I can see you guys and take questions verbally. I think that's it for the housekeeping. So I'm going to start my presentation. Just go ahead and start right in. If you've just joined us, make sure you're muted now, please, and your video is off. And Olivia or Valerie or both of you, once I start my slideshow, could you please just verbally tell me it looks, you're seeing it okay? So I'm going to screen share now. Because sometimes Zoom is wonky. It doesn't like to share properly. How does that look?
We see your opening slide.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Yay. Okay, now everyone can mute, please. And we will get started with elegant ink for your field journals. I'm Roseanne Hanson. I'm the Art and Science Program Coordinator at the Desert Laboratory on Tumamoc Hill. I've also been nature journaling, field sketching as a naturalist for, oh gosh, well over 36 years, more than that actually. And I love sharing my passion for using notebooks, sketching, and taking notes and metadata, as you all know. I'm crazy about metadata, to learn about nature. It's such a wonderful way to dig deep. And I'm also the author of Nature Journaling for a Wildlife, which is an 8-week class in a book with a nature journal included, watercolor paper included with the journal itself. So thank you very much for joining me. So we're going to start with just a brief history here. And also, what is ink? Ink this is interesting, and it's kind of important because this is going to help us define what kind of pens and ink work best for what we want to do. So ink is defined as a solution, a sol, or a gel that contains at least one colorant, such as a dye or a pigment. And we're going to talk about those two different things. A sol is, this is very technical, a colloid comprising solid particles in a continuous liquid medium. So like blood, pigmented ink, paint, mud is a sol. So that's what defines ink. And the earliest ink, so people, we don't really know because it's not very, in the archaeological record, ink doesn't stick around, right? So the earliest ink was probably powdered charcoal, soot, or graphite, which is found and can be ground up maybe as early as 4,000 years before the current era. It became ink when that was powdered and mixed into a carrier like water, and then something to make it bind to the media that they're using, either clay or paper, when that became possible. And the first one was a collagen protein extracted from boiled animal hide. It's called hide glue. And that's what early inks were made from. Then something called lamp black kind of emerged when oil lamps and things were becoming possible 2,000 years ago. And this eventually became what we now call India ink, which curiously wasn't discovered in India, but China. It's just later the supplies come out of India largely. So it's now called India ink and still very popular today. And then another famous important ink, which became super popular and very widespread about 1,600 years before now in Europe, where it became very popular and widely used and known to be used by Leonardo da Vinci, Rembrandt, and other masters. These images here are da Vinci's sketches, and that's iron gall ink. Interesting, there's a lot of misinformation on the internet. Oh, really? A lot of people have been attributing his ink to walnut ink, but the source for the best information about Da Vinci's sketches is the British, the Royal Collection. So Queen Elizabeth has the largest number of Da Vinci sketches in the world, like 144 sketches. And they obviously study the content. So it's iron gall ink, which, this is cool. I delved into my notebooks from 12 years ago. I tried making my own oak gall ink. And I found this recipe in a great book on nature journaling by Gwen Diane. That was a medieval recipe. So I tried to copy it. Before I go any further though, if you don't know what oak galls are, they are, you could call them baby wasp apartment buildings, right? So they're hollow, circular, they call them oak apples sometimes, that grow on oak trees, but they're not reproductive on the oak tree. It's actually a teeny tiny wasp. There are many genera, hundreds of genera that are dependent on certain oak trees or other trees. And they somehow, and they don't know for sure, it's either a protein or a hormone or something that the female wasp injects into the plant, or they don't know for sure. And it causes the plant to grow this little gall, and the little larvae of the wasp develop in there. And then when you see the hole in the gall, the baby wasp has emerged. So you grind these up, they're full of tannins, which is what you want to make the dark color. So I tried this following this recipe, which is this medieval recipe. Grind the galls to powder, boil them in rainwater for as long as it takes to recite the Pater Noster 3 times. Right? That's, I think, the Lord's Prayer, right? Add drops of a mild acid, vinegar or lemon juice, until the liquid turns from rich brown to a deep black. Well, I never really got anything more than a brownie brown, no matter how much I altered the recipe. But then curiously, so this is really kind of cool. 12 years later now, I know why. So I was stirring it with a silver plate spoon, and I set the spoon down, 12 years ago, on the counter. I did something, and half an hour later, I came back, picked up the spoon, and underneath, it was pure black, beautiful black. I couldn't replicate that. Now I know why. You have to add iron salts to make iron gall ink. And if I had added iron sulfate or some other iron salt, I would have had black. So I'm going to try that again. That's just kind of my nerd thing for the day. All right, so today now we have so many different kinds of inks and pens to use, and it can get kind of confusing and overwhelming. And you can use pens from, a quill pen to a dip pen. Quill pens are dip pens, which have interchangeable nibs. And I'll talk about this a little bit more. Fountain pens, ballpoint pens, microns, so many different kinds. Roller balls, we'll talk about these. Okay, so to kind of drill down, what kind of ink do we want to use in our notebooks? Here are the different two basic types you want to be looking at: dye-based inks or pigment-based inks. And there's good reasons for both, actually. The dye-based ink, so the dyes are fully dissolvable in the liquid, usually water. And they have very bright colors. They're better for fountain pens because they don't tend to clog if you don't use them frequently. Oops, if someone can please mute, I'm hearing somebody talking. Thank you very much. So the cheaper ones can be prone to fading. Again, the cheaper ones are probably not waterproof, but there are exceptions. There are really good dye-based inks from Noodler's, Higgins, Diatramentis, and others. So you just have to look for those. And I'll talk more about their behavior. And then pigment-based inks. So the pigment particles are suspended in the carrier fluid. They're not as dissolvable, but you get blacker blacks. They're really waterproof. They dry more quickly. They're archival. They don't fade. But if you don't use them regularly in a fountain pen, they will clog. You have to rinse them out or clean them out. It's a great excuse to I've got to work on my sketching today because otherwise my pen will clog. And interestingly, a lot of ballpoint pen ink is pigment-based ink and can be nice and permanent. And micron pigment ink is pigment-based. So then what type of pen do you want to carry your ink? So your ink carries your thoughts and your ideas and sketches, and your pen carries your ink. So I've drilled this down to some things you want to look for. So first would be cost. So do you want an affordable pen now, or can you make a long-term investment? Because some fountain pens can be quite pricey. Simplicity. So how averse are you to too much fiddliness? And I'll talk about that in relation to fountain pens. Versatility, how many tools do you want to carry? Do you want one for everything, or are you willing to carry 3 or 4 or 5 different pens? So versatility, or different weights of line, things like that. And then another one that's really important to me is the cost for the planet. Single-use plastic products are very harmful. They stay in landfills for a very long time. And you can do single use, or you can do refillable, which doesn't have as much waste or no waste. So, and to talk about that in a little bit more depth, because as nature journalers, one of the things we want to do is be really good stewards. And you want to know that the life cycles of plastics that you throw in a landfill. So a plastic pen could be there for as long as 400, 500 years. And also there's a human cost. A lot of countries, especially in Europe, they're out of landfill space and they ship their garbage to other countries. And so there's a human cost. So we have to think about those too. So ballpoint pens, that is a great tool. And you can find some good ones that have like this one. They are oil-based pigment ink. They are fade resistant and usually waterproof. And they dry really quickly. That's one of the big benefits. And then so they don't smear as easily. It's not a downfall, but it's just you have to realize the ink is a little more viscous, so it doesn't flow super freely if you're a fast sketcher. Your line weights are not going to be variable. You can't vary the pressure usually to get more ink out of the ball. And you can find refillable ballpoints like this Zebra brand, which I really like. It's a good company, really good good pens. So, and that's a stainless steel pen. So it's not plastic. Well, it has a little bit of plastic. So the cost is very inexpensive. It's very simple to use. Just click and use. It's not very versatile. One line. And the cost for the planet, I would call moderately high to high. You're still, you do have a plastic bit of the insert that does get thrown away. It's not the very hard plastic though, like some of the other pens I'll show you. Rollerball pens. So these are usually dye-based ink almost invariably because of the way they work. Some brands have waterproof, fade-proof ink like this Uniball, which has what they call their super ink. The ink flows really well. It's not really viscous. So it's that dye-based, water-based ink. So it flows really nicely. So if you're a quick sketcher, this is a great pen. It can bleed. That is one of the things about dye-based inks is they can bleed on especially cheaper papers. You just know that and alter your paper to suit. The line weights are not variable. And it is possible to find a little bit more ecologically suitable ones. Like this is an 80% post-consumer recycled plastic by Uniball, and it's called the Onyx. So very inexpensive, super simple, not super versatile. It still goes to the landfill, but at least it's a second generation. Micron pens, widely used, the first technical pen after this, those of you who were in scientific illustration, 30 years ago, we used, the technical pens. I just got the name of them. Staedtler's was one of the brands. Anyway, this is the first like really easy to use technical pen that's pigment-based ink. It doesn't bleed or fade. It's waterproof. It doesn't flow freely in these though. The nib is really delicate, so it's easy to crunch it if you push too hard. The line weight per single pen isn't variable, but you can purchase lots of different line weight sizes of nibs, pens, so 0.1, 0.2, 0.8, etc. And lots of different ink colors. It's pretty inexpensive, very simple to use, not versatile in that you need a lot of pens to have different line weight, and it's a disposable pen, hard plastic. So fountain pens, you probably already guessed I'm a fountain pen fan. You can have a reservoir that holds any ink you want. So you can make it a dye-based ink or a pigment ink. Nibs are interchangeable on many, and they can be flexible and produce variable line widths from teeniest tiny whisker lines all the way to big, bold swooshes that I'll show you. They can be very fiddly. You have to have a high tolerance for fiddliness, and I can show you, how they work and what goes into them. But you have to refill it by hand using a little siphon thingy, and it can get messy sometimes. Another benefit though is that you can carry, a generous supply in a little, a Nalgene bottle, which are those super leak-proof bottles. This will last me months and months. So you can stick that in your field bag and you're good to go. So fountain pens can be very inexpensive, $10, all the way to really, really expensive, hundreds of dollars, and everything in between. They're fussy, as I said, very versatile, many different nibs. They're flexible, so they can make different lines, and so pretty darn versatile. One pen is all I use. I really don't swap around. And the cost for the planet is low, especially if also your ink you purchase it in the recyclable glass jars. So, or plastic bottles are recyclable too. So then there's also a kind of a subgenre called a dip pen, not super well suited to nature journaling, although lots of urban sketchers use these and they've learned to hold their ink jar and their notebook. It's pretty impressive. But these are, they don't have a reservoir. You just dip the nib right into your ink. But there's so many different types of nibs, which are really easy to swap out. So you can have chisel points and fine points and medium points, and it's crazy cool. And really important, if you're using like old-fashioned inks like iron gall, or you make your own walnut ink and you're using that iron sulfate, they're highly corrosive. So you don't put those in your favorite fountain pen. You would use a dip pen or a quill. So this, I have a handout for you. So don't worry about like scribbling all this down. This chart is in the handout for you, which just is basically everything I just said. So which can help make decisions. Okay. And this is the variability versus not variability I was talking about. So here are 3 different fountain pens. On the Lamy Safari, the one on my left, I don't know what it's showing on your screen, which has a steel nib. That's a $27 pen, and fabulous. It is. I use that pen in my wallet. I'll show you. Not from the nature journaling though. It's perfect for that because I'll tell you why the other pen I use. But I can get like 3 different line weights out of the Lamy Safari. They do great with dots or lines or anything. My go-to pen, my everyday pen, was given to me by my husband on our first anniversary. So that was 36 years ago. It's no longer made, this particular Mont Blanc, but it has a 14 karat gold nib, which is extremely flexible and strong. So I can get like 5 different line weights out of it, much finer line and much really thick lines. Love this pen. You can actually find them on eBay for about $130 now, 140. They're a really great pen. They're not the big, gross, fat Mont Blancs that are popular now. It's a very slender one. And then there's an Edison. This is a handmade pen. It's about $150. It has a steel nib that has a gold plating. So it still acts like a steel nib. I can only get 3 line weights out of that one. I didn't end up liking this pen. I didn't like the balance of it. And that's something you'll want to try out. Pens have a balance in your hand. It's a fit. So you'll want to find what works for you. And then on the right, you can see the different lines with a micron, a uniball, and then the roller ball. That's a Parker refill for a Parker pen called Quink. So you can see the different line weights. Okay. So now what we're going to do, I'm going to stop this. I'm going to talk just a minute more and then we'll go to making marks. So here's what we're going to practice. We're going to practice varying line pressure and contact with the paper. We're going to do straight lines, curved lines, and then we're going to practice slow and deliberate and quick and free, different types of marks. We're going to look at values. We're going to look at when you're sketching a form, 2 different ways to vary what you do. I call it a true outline or outline or broken line. And you can combine them, but we'll look at what they are and how they change what your mark making, what it looks like to your viewer eyes. And then putting it all together, we'll look at how to change your focal point when you're doing a pen sketch, because you're everything that you're doing just with pen. You're not going to have that watercolor that you can do your depth with. So you're going to have to think about things like that. Positive and negative, how to pull different things out using that light and dark. We'll practice some vegetation. I'm not going to get to skies today because we've decided at the Sky Skipito Appreciation Society, we're going to do a whole thing on doing skies just with ink. So it's a whole other thing that I think would take up too much time. I don't think we'll have time today anyway. So, okay, whoops. I'm going to stop this and switch to my doc. Well, we'll take a little, okay. I lost you guys. Am I back? Okay, I'm back. Are we good? Can you guys let me know verbally if that looks fine?
You're fine.
We're good.
Thank you. Sometimes it was so strange from my end. I can't see certain things, so I appreciate that. I'm going to switch over, but let me let's look at a few. I'm looking for the all cap questions. Those of you who just joined us, I asked for specific questions. If you could use all caps, I know it looks like shouting, but that helps me find them. So have you tried the Sailor Fude Demand pens? No, I have not. And at the end, let's share, those of you who are using different pens, there's so many and you just can't use them all. Sounds like this one has a really good nib. And that's the key really, is ink delivery and the nib, and whether it's flexible to give you enough line variation. Also the ink that you use. I recently put dye-based ink in my Lamy Safari because it's my pen that lives in, this is my wallet. Let me show you here. Right. So this is my wallet and my pen carrier there. And I have, notebooks in my wallet that I keep diaries. And I even also have a little sketch pad in the middle for those moments where you're like, oh, and I've got my wallet with me and I've already got. And so that's my pen that I carry in my wallet. And I put dye ink in there and it flows a lot more freely. So I have to get used to that than my pigment-based ink, which I use in the Mont Blanc. Really different. So just note that if you change out inks, it's going to behave differently. And we'll look at that on the samples that I'll do. Rotring art pen is very versatile. These are great. So I'll be saving the chat, everyone, so you can find these later. You don't have to worry too much about copying this down. Yeah, can you save the comments? So I will, and you can also save them yourself. At the end, you can go down in the chat. If you look on the far right, there's a ... click that and you can download it yourself, but I'll be doing it, so don't worry. Great, so let's make marks because that's what this is about. And then at the end, we can also share our pen. Everybody can talk about their pens and why they like them. Let's do that. So I'm switching now to a document camera. Okay, great. Let's settle here. Perfect. Everyone seeing that okay? Well, since I'm not hearing no, I'm going to assume we're okay. We looking good? Okay. So I'm just going to show you real quick too, the difference in the flow, and make sure this is going to be close enough. I can zoom in more as well. So I'm going to get in a little closer. Okay. Yeah, that's better. Okay,
That's good.
So thank you. So this pen has pigment ink. It's not skipping as much as it's showing here, but I'm going to press a little harder. But you can see line variation there. It doesn't flow super freely, but it dries much more quickly. One thing I found about the dye-based ink is that it takes forever to dry. It's water-based. More so the pigment ink just seems to it's more viscous and it dries more quickly. So this is dye-based ink, and it's flowier is the best way to put it. But if I were to put watercolor over this right now, it would bleed. Well, even 5 minutes from now, it's going to bleed an hour from now. This you have to really let dry. So that's a drawback for me of this. This is Noodler's document or bulletproof black. I like Noodler's brand a lot. All made in the USA. Their bottles, their caps, everything's made in the US. Small company. And they have bulletproof dye-based inks. Bulletproof is their kind of code for their more or less waterproof, but you do have to let it really, really dry. because I'm used to the pigment-based ink, which for me is the platinum carbon black. This is all in the handout I've given you, so you don't have to write it all down. I could probably watercolor over this pretty much now on a 90-pound cold press watercolor paper. So let's make marks. Get your pens. What we're going to do is I'm just going to give you some mark language. So learning how to make different marks with your pens will help you when you get down to sketching a scene or an animal or something, because you're going to have vocabulary. The marks are your vocabulary. And I'm going to show you some things you can make your own. We'll call it an ink palette. I'll show you shortly. I'm going to sketch with this because I'm most used to that pen. So the first thing we're going to do is what I call slow, straight, deliberate lines. So slow and deliberate. And then after that, we're going to do quick and free. Slow and deliberate, quick and free. So we're going to start with straight lines, slow and deliberate. So just for a few minutes, I'm going to keep my eye on the time, but it's good to warm up here. I wonder if I can tilt that a little. If you guys don't mind looking at it tilted, it's a little easier for me. So we'll just do a square of straight lines like so. Go slow and deliberate. Try to keep your spacing even pressure. And we'll do squares like that. And again, slow, deliberate. It's a very yoga Zen-like, right? Try doing it. So most people have a way that they are most comfortable drawing, from left to right or right to left. Those of you who are left-handed trying to use fountain pens or any ink, there are quick drying inks made just for lefties. Goulet Pen Company. And again, the handout I'll be putting a link to just a moment. I just happened to see your chat. Let me swap over here. Let me see. Oh, okay, sorry, just sort of lost. There we go. All right, so the handout, I'll be putting the link in the chat shortly, but let's just focus right now on these marks. So lefties, Goulet pens, give them a call, say I'm a lefty, I need a quick drying ink. And it's GOULET pens.com. So for me, the up, down, or these marks are harder for me. I'm not as steady. Yes, you can turn your paper, but the idea here is to get conversant in different directions as well. Learn where your strengths are. So let's do diagonal. Slow and deliberate. If you're using a roller ball or similar, just keep your pressure the same. With the fountain pen, it takes a little more practice. Didn't quite get a perfect square there. And then let's try the other way. Let me try it kind of backwards. Woo, this is going to be a little harder, but again, I'm trying to vary my mark making. This is a little wobbly. But again, I want those straight lines. Do them close together. You do this enough, it's like any language. It will become second nature. I can do those pretty quickly now. Although I didn't get this very even, I need to be a little bit more deliberate if I want super even. So, all right, let's try slow and deliberate, but vary the line weight. Those of you who are using fountain pens can do this with your roller balls. My roller ball. I'll be pulling a roller ball in just in a minute to show that one. But let's vary the line weight. What does that look like? So I press harder at the beginning and then I let it go soft. Press hard, let it go soft. Hard, soft, hard, soft. Oop, didn't quite get it as variable there. Hard, soft. And we'll do that, just try different ways. Whoa. And this is where I go wobbly, so I need more practice doing the down. I'm not as good with the down. It's just not as perfect. So that's why you practice. Yeah, see, you'll notice that it's a little more wobbly there. So yeah, we can try like go soft, then hard, soft, hard. And it's a different texture then. So that's what we're trying to do is learn how to get different feel from different marks. Excuse me. So you see how those look quite different on the paper. So now let's try, still going deliberate. We're not doing quick yet. Let's try wavy lines. So these are, and I'm going to do uniform for the first one. So there's a wavy line. And then you want to mirror that as, or don't, maybe you, actually this is mirroring rather than copying. So just varying what you do. Notice it's uniform though. And I can also vary those press hard, press light, press hard, press light, hard. Hard, light, hard, light, hard. Totally different look. And you want to learn to use those in your sketches because variation is actually quite nice. And if you're used to doing that, then you can pull that out of your hat tricks and you'll see why they look really nice on the paper. Really uniform lines look very mechanical. So now let's switch to fast because we're just warming up here. And then this will give us, we'll have plenty of time for practice sketches as well. So let's do fast. Fast and free. It's a little harder to stop at the right time. But I like the way they look. It's really going to be a personal style for you. I'm better at the up and down if I go fast. So these are uniform. And then let's try, what does the diagonal look like? I'm going fast, so try it again. Like that. And also, don't forget, you can cross-hatch these. So you can do them fast, cross-hatching, or I can go in here and maybe do very deliberate cross-hatching, much more technical look, very static look. Takes a while to do these. Also can be kind of hard on your wrists, so try not to grip too tightly. Like that. So you can see the different looks that you can get here. You can also turn these into different textures by cross-hatching. That would make, really cool water texture, for example, when you get that wobbly water look. So what else do we have? So on my list here. Yes, let's do curved lines. Let's see where we're at here. Yes, okay. So this is, again, more practice. And we're going to get to the point where we can draw circles by freeform. So that's always a fun thing. And you do have to kind of practice and get that swoosh in your hand language. Literally, we're putting these marks into the memory of our hands and brains so that these marks start to come naturally. So let's do some curved, slow, deliberate. So what does that look like? Let's just do some nice shallow curves like that. It wasn't very uniform, was it? Shallow curves this way. Now let's go this way. And deliberate that's a really nice line, isn't it? Deliberate. These are uniform. Like so. Well, let's keep going. Let's make them a little bit more curvy. Getting that into my memory, as it were. More curvy. Notice which way you feel more comfortable, left to right, right to left. I can do, it's left to right for me. I can do right to left, it doesn't feel as solid. And then finally, you get to the point where you can put them together and make a circle. Or just do it all at once, because that's now in your memory. Almost circle there, a little bit off, because I was sitting at an angle, so that came out kind of funny. I go right over it. There, not bad for freehand. So practice that. Then you want to practice variable line curves. So press, release. Let's go soft and press. Soft and press. Soft, press, press, soft. And then if we were to do practice circles with variables, so I'm pressing hard, light, hard, not quite as variable, a little harder to do. Press. That's an oval. So just you practice these. Same with curves. So we want to do like that, big curves. We did small curves, just nice and variable. So these can also be quick. Just notice the difference. These look very controlled, static. These are much, kind of the energy comes through. So your style is going to be something in that you'll either really like this or you'll really like this. And sometimes you combine the two, but just notice what that conveys to the reader. This is very deliberate. This is very static. This is a bit more energetic and alive and interesting, I think. So like that. All right. Oh, my dip pen just went apart. So I just bumped my dip pen and it came apart. So okay. Now from here, let's see. Let me see if there's any questions here. I don't want to get into the document camera stuff right now. We can do that after. Someone has just clicked the button, live transcription be enabled. That's not possible. That is a paid service. I'm sorry, I'm not able to do that. That's something that we have to set up in advance, and it's a paid service, and I don't have that subscription. So sorry about that. Let me throw the handout in the email while we're taking a quick break here. Questions, just use the raise hand feature for questions so I can find you guys if someone wants to do verbal questions. Let's see. Great. So Jane, go ahead and ask your question verbally.
Are gold nibs more flexible than steel?
Yes, the 14 karat gold nibs have a lot more range in their flexibility. The steel nibs definitely are just not as flexy. They're very strong, which is good if you use them a lot. So here's like the finest line I can get out of the Lamy support, which has a great nib. I really like their nibs. And then this is the kind of the range I can get out of the Lamy. Just a little bit less control. It lets this nib lets the ink out in a little bit more controlled way. You just have to try a lot of different ones till you find what works for you. Did anyone else want to do raise hand and ask a verbal question? Oops, there, I got the handout there is in the chat. Remind me to put that in again. Suzanne, so I just saw in the chat, Suzanne Marshall says, I just drew the bear that walked in my front yard. Awesome, I love that. Wonderful. So any other questions? Anything we want to see? Let me see, where am I? I want to show the roller ball. Aha, we'll use this one. Just so you can see the difference here. Nope. Okay, I had the wrong one out. So this is a roller ball with a cartridge. So if you don't know, these are cartridges that fit into various pens. Here, very fine, beautiful lines, but pressing hard doesn't change the line width. So to get a stronger line, I have to go over it multiple times. Like so, but it flows very quickly. It's good if you're doing a lot of writing, like so. There. And then just as a comparison, let's see, to show you the insides of the fountain pens, how they work. I did want to cover that real quick. This is the siphon, and you pull it out, and the inks this one has a little cup inside. Can't quite see it, but there's a little cup, a well that it fills in, and you dip the siphon, and then you literally just twist the cap of the siphon here, and it just sucks the ink into the reservoir. And depending on how much I'm doing, this will last me a week or two of ink, maybe more. So you're not doing it super often. So this has the same, the reservoir has to be made for the specific pen, but they're really easy to find. Okay. So now we're going to kind of put all this together. and how we're going to do that. So I'll urge you to, I'm going to show you a couple things. I urge you to make your own, what I call an ink, tone, and texture palette. So as you're doing a sketch, and this is done with the platinum carbon ink in the Mont Blanc. So as you're doing your sketches, it's nice to have in your mind what different textures look like. And so build yourself up your own chart like this. This is just, I just drew this with pencil using my ruler here. I think they're 2 centimeters by 2 centimeter squares, and then go from light toner value to dark, and from smoother, more mechanical to freer, crazier textures. And you grade it. It's a great exercise. We're not going to do them all together here now because it would take a long time. This took hours and hours because you want to let them dry before, you don't want to put your hand over it. Oh, speaking of that, here's a little quick tip for you if you don't already do this. I keep, printer paper, pieces of it in my field notebook in the back. I use it for scratch paper for like practicing things. Also, for those of you using pens and you're working on something, use it as a hand rest. So when you're sketching, you're not smearing ink if you've already put something down, or often, you're dirty or you've been playing in the dirt. You'll get that on your paper. You don't want to do that. So keeping your wrist rest there is a great idea. So do an ink, tone, and texture palette. That is a great exercise. And these are in that handout that I gave you as well. The paper, oh, thank you for asking the question about the paper, Betsy. So one thing I recommend you do, actually, it's same thing with watercolor. When you're learning your pen work, you got your fountain pen or a new pen, use the same paper consistently. Don't swap your papers around a lot, or you won't really learn how it behaves on the paper. This is 90-pound B watercolor paper, B paper. B paper was recently bought by Royal Brush Company, and it's getting harder to find. I'm worried that they're going to drop their paper line. I don't know, or if it was COVID, but B paper is getting harder to find. So 90-pound cold press watercolor paper. It's got some texture, you can see there, but not a lot. And it really takes watercolor beautifully. It's smooth for ink, but has a little tiny bit of texture. Thanks for asking that. Okay, so let me put this back here. Here's another palette I recommend that you make. So regarding marks, we're talking about mark making. So I call this a vegetation palette. So we're going to see as we go into like trying to figure out what marks to make for doing trees and stuff, because you don't want to draw every single leaf, right? It gets kind of silly, or bush. So practice these marks, and these are just extensions of the lines we just did. So, swoopies or pointies, things like that. So practice your up and downs, your down, up, left and right swoopies, pointy swoopies. So these are approximating leaves on your trees. So this is what they look like in practice. So here's a tall spiky tree. Here's a roundy bush. Here's a branch tree. And these are the different, these are the languages that you want to draw from. So you keep these in the front of your notebook. And when you're like, oh, I've got to do that bush there, I'm going to go check and see, just remind myself what are the different looks? What does the pointy radiated look get me on the paper versus the roundy one? So we'll play with those too. So moving to the next phase, what we're going to do, I'm going to take one photo. I'm going to put it up here. I'm going to switch to a different view here. Thank you, Jane. Sorry, I didn't see that question until just recently. Are there rules for which inks go in which pen? No, it's not a rule. It's going back to the characteristics of the inks. It's what you need for your application, for your purposes. So the dye ink that I have in this pen, I like it for my wallet because it's quick and smooth, writes quickly, but more importantly, I don't use this all the time. And so it's not going to clog up if I don't use it frequently, like every other day minimum. So that's the purpose for that one. I like pigment ink in this pen for my field notes because it dries quickly for watercoloring. I know it's archival and permanent, and I'm really used to using it. I really, really like it. So that is, they're not rules, it's what works for you. So if you like a flowy, quick ink, use a dye ink, but realize it's going to take a long time to dry if you want to do watercolor on it. So that's why. All right. Now we're going to go, we're going to do sketches using one photo. And I'm going to switch now. There we go. Okay, now you can see. Did it come back properly?
Yes.
All right, great. So what we're going to do, let me move my camera a little bit. Okay, so this is a photo of a saguaro cactus outside of Tucson. And we're going to practice some things here so that using our marks and different techniques, using the same thing over and over so we can see what it looks like to do these variations. So the first thing we're going to do is let's just draw that saguaro. Don't worry about getting it perfect. We're practicing. Don't stress on, it's gonna be perfect. I've drawn a zillion saguaros. This is where I live. So they come really quick for me, but some people struggle. So the first thing we're gonna do is what's called a true outline. And then the second thing we'll do is what's called a broken line sketch. So you can see the difference, what they look like. So let's do a true outline. So I'm going to use a solid line. Let's get this, the arm that's kind of coming out toward us. I'm going to come up and down, and I'm pretty bold outline here. There's another arm that's kind of touching this one that comes out up here. Rump. Okay, and it gets a little fatter at the bottom, so I'm actually going to introduce a little bit of width there. And then there's a few more. I actually did that the wrong way here. I'm just going to put one tucked right in there. There's actually 3, but I'm going to only do 2. Like I said, I want to practice here. So I'm using slightly lighter lines for these back here. Tucked in there. All right. I'm not gonna worry too much about perfect here. Okay, and then for this solid line sketch or the outline, let's get some of these ribs. We're gonna use slightly lighter lines. Remember, we've been practicing our lines here, so I want to get as straight of line as possible. Oop, got a little wobbly there. Do your saguaro rib lines. So it's great to do saguaros because you get to practice your lines. And I'm going to give it some form. Now, I'm not copying the shadows exactly as in the photo. We are doing an ink drawing, and I want to show you what the darkness you can get with this type of stronger outline here. There's a little shadow under here. And then we're going to add some lines here. I'm doing these a little lighter, maybe one or two stronger ones at closer to me. Now these ribs, or the, excuse me, arms in the back, I'm actually don't want a lot of detail there. And I'm going to use cross hatching here to push those into the back a little bit. Not a lot of detail. And then let's give this arm a little bit of shadow here. And I'm using curved lines. Okay, I'm not going to get too much detail, more detail here, but curve to show that shape. And I'm going to darken down here. And then again, the arms that are in the back, I don't want a lot of detail. Someone's got their sound on, so if you could get your sound off, that would be great. Check your mutes, please. So that is a true outline sketch of a saguaro. Now let's try it with broken line. So we're going to do the same thing. And do whatever arms you want. We're not copying this exactly. We're using it as an inspiration. So let's start. Now, this time, I'm not doing a solid line. I'm going to press a little harder so you can see that. Because we want to see what a broken line. And if you want to do pencil first, just to give your a guideline, that's fine too, because it takes a lot of practice to do the broken line sketch. I want to like do it solid right away. Oops, see, I got that one a little bit solid. I'm going to be filling this in just a little bit so you can see it better. Now, it's a lot sketchier. It's a lot lighter. I'm going to do a couple of darker lines in here. Remember those swoopy lines we practiced, not deliberate? Let's continue that here. Oops, that got a little wobbly. I'm going to change this exposure a little bit. So let's see. I want you to be able to see what this is looking like. Maybe get it just a little bit closer so you can see the sketchy difference. I'm going to keep working on that. Now let's put some ribs in here. Lighter lines, sketchier. I'm varying the pressure that I'm using. If you're using a roller ball or ballpoint pen, just lift, like as you go, lift it off a little bit. Let's shade this side a little darker. Again, I'm not going super bold because I don't want a really bold look here. One thing I noticed is I need to strengthen that line a little bit. And let's put the shadows in here. All right, let's see how that looks in comparison. You see the difference, broken line sketchy versus bold outlines. There's two different styles of the same subject that work. You know, it's one's going to be something you're like, oh wow, I really like that, or you really like that. I prefer often the sketchier one, but this would work really well if you want to make the cactus like a super focal point of a sketch, and we'll look at what that will look like too. So that's true outline and broken line. Any questions? I'm going to look at the chat real quick. Let's see. Sorry. Someone was saying I'm off for dinner. Okay. I've started to make a gesture palette for quick sketched birds. Great idea. It's slow going. I would love for you to share that, Marilyn, too. And Annette is a beginner fountain pen user here. Not initially getting any variation in line weight. So at the end, let's cover that, Annette. Let's look at that. That'll be it's going to be a flow issue and maybe what ink. All right. So moving on, our next thing to look at. Let's see. I'm going to go with this one. So that was broken line outline. Now we're going to look at doing negative versus positive. This is another way when you're doing inks that you can get values that you would normally get maybe with watercolor, but just by using darks and lights. And this is a negative way of pulling out a light colored trunk. This is a dark trunk with lighter foliage. So here we have darker foliage, and that's picking out the trunk with the darker values. So positive and negative. Probably at this point, I'm not going to do a practice of this one because I want to get to the 3 different sketches of that saguaro, but I just wanted to throw that out there that, you know, we could do a saguaro, for example, I'll just do a mini one where say I do a quick pencil outline of a saguaro. Oh, you can't even see it. I did a very, very fine pencil outline. So it's going to be magic. It'll be like I'm doing it. You're not seeing it, but then I would do the foliage or values around it to pick that out, or it could be the sky. So that the saguaro shape starts to, oops, see, I got doing this really quickly. I'm not getting even values. So you can do this slow and deliberate, would work better. I'm doing it kind of fast, but that's how you would say, pick out the saguaro. And then maybe you then do a little bit of sketchiness in there, but it picks it out in that negative. So that's how maybe we would do that. But let's get to our next examples. And that is a quick value sketch and then a focal point sketch. And if we have time, we'll do kind of a stylized sketch. So let's do, let me show you what those look like. I did some samples. So first is a 15-minute value sketch. I do need to change that. Come on. There we go. That's better. Okay, the exposure. Okay, so 15-minute value sketch. So that's pretty much just taking that scene and turning it into, like, I picked out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 shapes, roughly. And then I used various combinations of my tone palette and my vegetation palette to add different textures to show all that jumbly desert bits. And I didn't, there's no one focal point. I even tried to do some quick clouds. This is only about 15 minutes. The focal point tends to be the larger, darker part here. And that works really well. I was pretty happy with that. Remember that when you're doing little landscapitos like this, you can edit, you can pull out things that you like, you can skip things you don't like. But here's another way to look at it. You can do a sketch where you have a focal point. So those prickly pear cactus pads that are out of focus in the photo, I decided, well, let's make those the focal point here. And I made the desert scene and the saguaro just go into the background by making them really, really light. So let's duplicate that quickly. These are probably took me longer than it's going to take me now because I'm not going to take 15 minutes. I don't want to take all of our time. I want to be able to chat and talk pens and talk inks and things. So let's give us plenty of time. But let's try a couple of those. So first we'll going to do the value, another quick value sketch. Send this up here. Okay. Actually, I kind of have to turn it because it's easier for me. I'm going to do a bounding box. Here's where your line work. Wow, see, I'm just not as good at this up and down lines. That one's better. There, bounding box. Okay. So I'm going to do just the desert sketch here. I'm going to mark kind of where the saguaro, here's the top of the saguaro. I'm going to sketch it in really lightly because I'm going to go back and do the details, and I'm going to stop it right about there. It's like about that width. Gets skinnier. Okay. You can't really see this, but just know that what I'm doing is just getting my proportions and the things that I know I want to draw. I'm getting them placed so I can fix it later if I mess up. So okay. And I've got one. Okay, I think I might be probably taking too much time already. So let me just start inking this down. Quick sketch here, ink. And I'm using more sketchy. I'm slightly broken lines sometimes, though I want this saguaro to stand out nicely. So I'm definitely using more solid lines than broken. Okay, so it's kind of fatter than it should be, I think, but that's all right. Let's get our, there's like a prickly pear thing going on here. I'm deliberately editing out, I'm not including those big pads in the photo that are in the foreground because I've decided not to. Now let's get the mountain, and I'm not going to do that duotone all that much on the mountain. That's a little distracting, so I'm going to do without that duotone, and you can do that when you're sketching. So now we've got our shapes here. I'm going to do a very jaggedy, broken, uppity downy line there for that horizon of the plants. And then I don't want too many shapes in here, but I do know there's this ocotillo, right? So let's have fun with that. The ocotillo is a really cool plant, tall, spiky branches. That's just a placeholder there. I can see it in the photo. You might not be able to see it, but it is there. And it's got like lots of leaves. So I'm doing my, remember the roundy, because that's a nice little, I think that's a nice little touch there. Like that. And then how to do all that vegetation. Blah. Oh, let's get that cool tree, kind of that dead tree in there. There. Comes down like that. Very sketchy here. I'm not going to get too precious about this tree. But I want to place it before I do too much else. And I'm leaving that kind of open marked. Now let's give the saguaro its rib look here. Very pretty light. I'm going to give it more form on this side. So you know it's a cylinder. Darker line on the bottom of this so it stands out more, and then lighter on this. So that pops a little better. Same with this one. Getting pretty sketchy here. There. Yeah, I think I better leave that. You'd be tempted to go in and add a lot more detail, but I think that would kind of kill it. I did make it too fat, but that's okay. Now, let's look at, I'm going to do a quick treatment of the mountains. I like to go in and I'm going to get some of this cragginess here because it's really cool how much like there, and the dark mountain behind is going to set off the saguaro. So I'm going to make the mountain dark. So I'm going to do some vertical lines and then go in. So I don't want the mountain to take too long here, but I'm going to do some cross hatching because I'll probably do some straight lines for the sky. Boy, I'm doing this really fast. I'm surprised I haven't like shot ink off above the mountain. That would be something I wouldn't normally be afraid of doing. So fill that in. that almost a negative shape here, vary these cross hatches. And yeah, this is taking a while, so I'm going to go really fast. But you can see what the process is here. And you could do this mountain any type of texture you wanted. Just experiment until it works, something works for you. So mountain pushes it back. And then the different vegetation, let's just do, let's remember, most of these are spiky, so I'm going to be doing spiky, except here's another prickly pear, which is the round pad cactuses. I'm demarcating different areas of layered vegetation. There's grasses in here, we'll say. And so we're going to use that technique of laying in the different shape, foliage, using that language that we learned, the palette. So I can go in and I'm going to hash mark back in here because I don't want to interfere with the tree. But I wanted to give that a little bit more detail. And then you would go in and add some darks and some texture in here. Which you can do with random hash marks just to give it some good depth. So I think for now, for time, I'm going to leave this. I would go back in, I would give these some shading. You can go look at the example of how I did that. I don't want to go overboard, but maybe just a little bit more detail. Add some darks. Like that. Yeah, I could just keep going on and on. Well, let's try, I'm looking at the time. Now let's do kind of that focal point. I chose the prickly pear for that one, this one, where I put a lot of detail into this. You could also only do the saguaro as the focal point. So choose one, do a really detailed saguaro like this, do it really detailed, but then push everything else back. Don't do a lot of detail, just do a super detailed saguaro with very light, sketchy mountains like that around it, where then the saguaro becomes the highlight. So we can do that, or let's do something different. I don't have a sample of this one. Let's do a stylized one, like a super stylized. Again, I'm going to do a bounding box to make myself stay within a certain, this is like a landscape-ito, right? So by stylized, I mean, okay, let's really break this down into crazy shapes. And in this case, I'm going to use really bold lines. And the saguaro is going to be, we're going to do like super textury, almost Art Deco-y almost cartoony, I would call it. I just sort of made up that sword. So I'm going to go bold, like really bold lines. And maybe not very many lines, just 2. And maybe on this one, I'm actually going to push that all the way in the back black. Again, very stylized. Another reason I like the fountain pens. Oh, look, see, I forgot to use my protector. So I've got a smudge here, and I've transferred the smudge to the paper here. So what I did was I put it on the line because I'm going quickly, and so use your protector there. So it's very stylized. Now let's do the mountain shape. Very few shapes here. This is just another way to do it. Didn't quite get the mountain shape right, but that's okay. Come down here. The vegetation is going to do spiky, spiky, spiky. So this is like really quick. And then let's just pick a few things. We're going to do stylized prickly pear, limiting our shapes when we do stylized. And then crazy ocotillo would be fun still. And there's another, let's see. I think what we're just going to do is a layer of squiggles here like that. So let's do the ocotillo really stylized. Zig, 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 zig. I'm not doing loops, I'm doing zigs. Zig, 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 zig. To show it's a spiky plant. Again, think cartoony, very stylized. Okay. So you could get really stylized and do the mountains in these kind of vertical lines. But since it's mimicking the saguaro vertical, I want it to be pretty dark. Going really fast here, I think I would probably take more time normally to make this a little more uniform. And if you don't like the way that looks, which I'm not super fond of it, but the reason I went vertical is because then we might do our sky with horizontal lines. As we could crosshatch this, and then in here, going back to our vegetation palette, let's see. No, I'm going to go with my texture palette. We're not doing vegetation, we're doing representation. So let's look at I like this kind of crazy texture here. Let's try that in here. And we're going to do lighter and then medium here. So I'm just kind of doing crazy lines, mimicking sometimes the spikies. And see how that works? And it's saying to me, oh, this is kind of a crazy textured, spiky desert thing going on. And then in here, maybe we do the same thing, but we're going to do it denser. And that'll take a little bit more time. Hopefully you can see how I'm just sort of doing, I'm trying to mimic the spikies, but also just keep the pen moving so we get a different value. So this is an example of how you would do a really stylized sketch of the same scene. Be fun. It's fun. Just something a little different. You'll find what works for you. And your landscape too. So there. And then the sky. Okay, so say we've got a cloud here that I'm going to dot in the cloud. Here's how to do a quick sky. I'm very lightly scribing here. I think I'd like it better if I wasn't going so fast because I'm not getting super straight lines. Your sky gets lighter at the horizon. So maybe we can do like, give these a little of. So we want maybe a little bit more value around this cloud. Make the cloud pop a little better and then lighter. Okay, so you see how that kind of creates the cloud. So that's a stylized way to do it. You know, I could noodle on that for a while, but I don't. I think I would leave it. It's kind of cool the way it is. Maybe a little more detail in the prickly pear. Some spines, right? Something like that. Yeah. And done. You know, you don't want to mess with it too much. Maybe you would do, maybe you want to do a little bit of shading in here, but I think I'll leave it. I'm just doing dot, 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 dot. Just on the underside. Knowing when to stop is important. I have a hard time with that. So let's leave it, call that good. I want plenty of time for questions and to show you some examples. So what we're going to do is, I'm going to stop this. Okay. Ooh, that was like, oh, fast and furious. So a few questions. I'm left-handed, so very interested in learning about protectors. Well, I mean, it's just a sheet of paper, but I would recommend that the quick drying inks will be much better for you. I'm going to show you some examples and then we'll do Q&A. I want to show you real live nature journal pages that have these techniques in them. And then we'll go to live Q&A. That should give us time. Let's see, it is good. Okay. How's everybody doing? Good? Okay. I'm not hearing anything. No, help. Okay. Debbie, go ahead. Debbie just raised her hand. Go ahead and speak.
Sorry, it was accident trying to give you a thumbs up.
Sweet. Nice. I'll take it. Thank you.
Okay.
Nice. Thank you. Okay. Let's look at some examples of how this is going. Let's see. Keynote. All right. Is this showing Kim McNeck's beautiful sketch here?
Yes, it is.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So here's a great example of ink work. Kim McNett, she's a master. So notice the down in the lower right, the detailed sketch of the rock, the trees, very dark. Then behind that, she had just the gesture of the suggestion of lines and shapes in the back of the forest. Beautiful, perfect, just gesture lines for the ocean. And then above that, another, again, trees, used the suggested forms, didn't try to block everything in, just using some beautiful, beautiful line work. This is really a great example. Okay. Oh, haha. I have to hit play. Sorry about that. That was user error. Okay. Ryan Pedersen is really good ink work. This is really fast. As Kim's took a while. These are super fast little landscapitos, but I love his, notice the line weight variation, which he does by going back over it. Ryan sketches with a ballpoint pen. So any line variation you see is him just going back over it, not pressing harder. But notice how he gets some gorgeous shapes, shape of the landscape, and so forth. Just really, really nice work. This is an old 1930 sketch of the Tucson Presidio by Russell. I don't have any other information about this, but I really like the line work. Notice the sky, the mountains, how he brings the detail forward, and doesn't try to draw every brick in the Presidio wall, just suggestions of the brick. Great, great pen work here. And I got very excited because he actually really was looking at the landscape, because I noticed that, if you can see my mouse, this saguaro and tree behind it is a specific Palo Verde tree that is Parkinsonia. I was very excited, as from a botany standpoint. It's like, cool. He actually, even with a very sketchy suggestions, like, oh, well, that's not a regular foothills Palo Verde, that's a Parkinsonia. How cool is that? So geeked out a little bit there. Here's a example where I tried to do that kind of old-fashioned look, doing a prickly pear in my journal with mostly pen work, and I wanted to highlight just the single red blossom, which was pretty cool. And so I just left that as pen work. And I only used vertical lines for this and varied them to get the shape look, which was really fun. And I used some negative shape colors in here to show the social plant, kind of the way it really pops out by using that negative edge here. Putting the darks behind it shows that really well. Here's a very stylized saguaro drawing by Soraya Canning. Wonderful work here. And this is very meticulous. It's not really quick, sketchy gestury. This is very stylized. And her use of ink work is beautiful. And I love the use of the white and the dark. Really, really nice work. Another really stylized, I really wanted to play with kind of almost Art Deco mark making using my texture palette here. This was a really complicated landscape. It was a creek and flood. How to sketch that. I did one in watercolor and then one in just ink. And I actually exaggerated the size of that hill behind where the creek is coming down, because I really wanted that to pop. So you can do that, because I wanted that lowering clouds. And then the hills, I just did very stylized, but loop, loop, loop. The roily water, the waves on the water, again, stylized with very stylized waves. And then the rocks, I just kind of had fun with doing very geometric. Instead of trying to make them scritchy, I made them very geometric. So that's another way to do it. Lost my mouse. Okay. Xian Sheng was very active on the Nature Journal Club while he was working, I believe, on his PhD at Stanford. I think he's gone now because I haven't seen him post in forever. But he did these lovely, he would show his pen sketch and then the photo he of where he did this live. So he did this live standing at Horseshoe Bend in Utah. And I really love the way he picked the details and not, he didn't try to do everything. It's just beautiful work. The darks receding, did just enough of the rocks to work beautifully. Here's another of his at the Grand Canyon. Really complicated landscape, but he really pulled it out well with more detail in the foreground and pushing it back in the background. Really nicely done. Really like that. Okay, now let's go to Q&A. And I have lost my mouse. There we go. Okay, there we go. Let's go to questions now. Raise your hand to ask verbal questions. Let's do it that way. It's easier than me scrolling through the chat. I'm going to miss something. So please, if you don't mind, just put the raise hand. If you can't figure out how to raise hand, just start talking. Let's talk about your pens, because I know we had some specific questions. Who asked the question about your specific pen that you were having? Annette, are you still here?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, let's talk about your pen. Tell us about that.
Well, it's just a Uli Splendid pen. It was $5 at my local art store, and never really used a fountain pen before, but it's like I'm pressing harder and trying to lighten up to make variation in the line, and it's not working at all. Okay. So I decided, what if I use if I flip it, just turn the pen, and I do get a lighter line that way. Okay. But it is a steel nib, and I can feel that it's very stiff.
Mm-hmm. So my initial reaction would be how much did it cost? Did you say?
$5. So
try a $10 pen or even a $25 pen like the Lamy Safari.
Right.
And I think it's an issue with just the quality of the flow out of the nib that is probably doing that. And if if you're frustrated, otherwise make it work for you. So if you're like, no, I'm going to make this $5 pen work, which is awesome, then just learn. You learned, well, turn it over. Or try a different ink. Does it have a reservoir?
It doesn't, although I think I saw online that you can get a refillable reservoir that'll fit on it.
Yeah, so it might just also be an ink quality issue too. So try different inks. Okay. It really does make a big difference. I really noticed. My sketches would look completely different if I were using the Lamy, because right now it's got the Noodler's dye-based ink, and it just flows so much faster than my Mont Blanc that I'll probably blork a lot. I'm probably going to be, I tried to do a fine line and I couldn't, because I'm so used to it. I get very used to one style. So it's a language. You have to learn to speak the language.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Renata, go ahead and speak.
Yeah, if you could talk a little bit more about which pens with a reservoir you can recommend, but one that's not a Mont Blanc, but it's really expensive, right?
Exactly.
but it's still good,
Perfect.
I know that the Mont Blanc is up there with the best.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Well, if I hadn't, if it hadn't been a gift, I wouldn't have one either. So I put the link to the handout again where I do talk about.
Okay, great.
So millions of people, urban sketchers especially, and nature journalers really like the Lamy, Lamy,
Mhm.
Safari. I'm trying to find see, it doesn't have the name. There it is, Lamy.
Mhm. Okay.
Lamy.
Yeah.
And this is the Safari. It comes in lots of different colors. Fine nib. The nibs are interchangeable, so you could buy a different nib or do that if you didn't like the fine, or you wanted to, if you like a bold style. And the reservoir you buy separately. So the whole thing would probably be like $33, $34 with the reservoir. And
Yeah,
that
that sounds better than
and it's great.
regular.
And if you drop it in, over the edge of a cliff, you're not going to cry.
Yeah, exactly. That's important too.
Yeah. Anyone else can here's Georgine asked, do you feel the Mont Blanc ink? I don't use Mont Blanc ink. I have tried Mont Blanc ink, but I didn't continue with it. Interestingly, I do have Pelican ink as well, but I really personally just settled on the platinum carbon. Worked for me because it dries so quickly, because I do like a lot of watercolor. And Kathy in the chat says, try the sampler packs from Goulet pens, and that way you can try lots of different inks, because you are going to find one that works well for you, for sure. And jet pens, thank you, Amy. Jet pens, Goulet pens, those are in the chat. Really great companies, tons of information. And yeah, Amy, do you remember the name of the guy? It's right on the tip of my tongue, who has a blog, Parker blog, Paker blog, or is it Parker or Parka blog?
I think I've read.
Yeah, he's like a fountain pen crazy maniac person, and he's one of those bloggers that's been doing it forever. And anything you want to know about pens, go to his site. Okay, Jan Schwartz, please speak up.
I have a Lamy, and it came with a cartridge in it, but no ink comes out.
Oh, might be empty or dried up.
Okay, well, how do you clean the nib? Because eventually.
Okay, yay! Thank you. So let me go grab the pen. I'm going to show you what this stuff looks like. Thanks for this, because I did want to get to that. So this is invaluable Goulet pen flush. This stuff lasts forever. So get one of, if it doesn't come with it, I'm not sure it does, but this is a sample vial from Goulet pens. You can get ink samples. Like here's Diatramentis document dye ink. So just use an empty one, put a little bit of the solution in, because then it really saves. And then take your pen apart like so. Hopefully this won't spray. So I'm gonna pull the cartridge out. Oh, this is really stuck. And it's probably gonna spew ink all over me. Nope. Okay. So I just pulled that apart. Set this aside carefully so it doesn't drip. Got the nib. Put it in there. I keep like a plastic thing, stick it in there so it doesn't tip over, and just leave it for 2-3 hours, depending on how cloggy it is. And then their cleaning kit comes with, or just get one of these ear bulbs, it's for people cleaning their ears. And get some water and put it in there and flush it and flush it and flush it. And then you're good to go. So that is a really quick and easy way to clean your pens. Did that answer you, Jan?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, yeah, first clean the nib, but then get some other ink. It might be dried up.
Yeah, I'll buy a reservoir.
Yeah. Sherry, go ahead and unmute.
Well, I'm so in awe of all of these very experienced sketchers, and since I'm really new, I have a new variety of micron pens. I have a couple of different. They're all kind of the ballpoint type pen, and I'm learning to discern what's what. And so I'm wondering, Roseanne, if you have any suggestions about how to get comfortable. I guess it's just doing it with the different sizes of pens.
Yeah, it's like Jack Laws says, it's pen miles, pencil miles. It's just doing it, and do the exercises. If you want to just take an hour and do those exercises with the different pens, and label it, this is this pen, and do your exercises, and then this is this pen, and then do the foliage, and make some trees up, draw trees, just do it that way. You'll get more mileage in than forcing yourself to go outside and trying something new. If
do a whole scene or something, just
exactly.
Oh, that's a great idea.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Oh, sure. Miriam Ott. Great. Are you there, Miriam? Uh-oh, you're having trouble unmuting. Okay, Miriam's probably didn't hear me. So Denise Ramos, go ahead. And then Miriam, if you find yourself, go ahead, Denise.
First of all, thank you so much for a really in-depth presentation. I've been practicing a little bit as you were talking.
Good.
I'm curious to know, when you do your watercolor, do you put a lot less detail when you do the pen, or do you do the watercolor first and then do the pen overlay on top of it?
Great question. Yes, a lot less detail. So when I'm doing just pen work, it's a completely different mindset, because I'm going to be using I'll be using the watercolor for shadows and depths and things. So I'm usually just doing an outline, just really quick gesture for if I know I'm going to do watercolor. So if you're going to do ink, just ink, you have to think completely differently, look for your lights and darks, know what textures. That's why I do the little that tone and texture palette. So I know, I can plan ahead. Oh, I need to put that in there, that type of thing. So it's completely different. Yeah, different approach for sure. Connie asked in the chat, if you don't have the cleaning solution, is there anything else you can use? I don't know the answer to that. I would be careful, because you don't want to corrode your nice pens with something corrosive. So if not water, I don't know, I would call Goulet pens or jet pens and see what they say. I can't answer that, sorry. So Carol Morris.
Hi. Again, thank you so much for a fantastic presentation.
You're welcome.
Can you hear me?
Yes, just great.
And one suggestion I'd have, which helps with practice, is using some of you could start with Alfred Dwar. He has one on doing pillows, and that's a really good simple one to do, because you're familiar with pillows.
Did you put that could you put that name in the chat for us, please, so we can save that?
And also put in pen and ink drawings and find an artist that you like their style.
Yes.
There's nothing wrong with copying. So long as you're not selling this, just if you like a certain artist, start copying it, because what it does is it trains your eye and your hand to work together, so that you learn what one is, it cuts down on your skill learning time, because you start working out the problems that they've already worked out. So that would be my suggestion, but I will put that in the link for you for Alfred Dwar.
And that reminded me too, this is the one of the Bible of pen and ink. It's huge. This was written in the early part of the last century. It's the 60th anniversary. This came out. This is fantastic. Arthur Guptill's rendering in pen and ink. I got tons of my learning out of that. I've used this for a long time, and you'll recognize some of his exercises and things. I really like the way he does it. So highly recommended. I have time for like one more question, Susan, and then we'll be signing off. Susan.
Hi, wasn't really a question. The reservoir that you're referring to, if people are looking up, it's called an ink converter.
Thank you.
I'm a bit of a pen geek.
Yeah.
Because
Susan, I know.
I did miles and miles of pen miles practicing handwriting.
Perfect. Perfect. Yeah, that's
so this
perfect.
is just a continuation. Thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation. I've so enjoyed this morning, and I'm so excited to carry on. And I can't thank you enough for all your time and effort.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you. So someone said, document camera. I promised I would say, so it's nothing fancy. It's my iPhone. Ta-da. I have it on on an arm, and I use Filmic Pro, and I'll put that in the chat in a minute. And I like the iPhone because it renders the color so much better than the document cameras. It's just super sharp. And that's why you can write me, and I've got a how-to on that. I can give you the link too. So Susan Borsick, send me an email. I'll send you a link to a little video tutorial on that. So, okay, so I'm wrapping up. Thank you, everybody. There's tons of great information in the chat, which I'll save. And if you want to support the free presentations, I have a little donation site. You can use the tip jar I just put in the chat. That helps me keep doing the free workshops that I really, really enjoy doing, and then more and more people can come. So thank you all for coming. Oh, Carol, thank you. Albrecht Dur. Pillows, how nice. And thank you all for all the information in the chat. I will be sending that. I'll have the recording and the special, the web page with all this stuff on it and your downloads probably tomorrow. We'll see, if not this afternoon. All right. Thank you everyone for coming. Have a wonderful rest of the weekend. Enjoy. Bye, everybody.